Welcome to UBI Unplugged, breaking down the future of income. Excited to be diving into this crazy topic today. What's on the agenda?
Crazy is one word for it. I'm ready to tear this whole UBB thing apart piece by piece. But yeah, what are we talking about specifically today?
Okay, easy there, Otto. Today we're tackling UBI and its impact on intellectual property in a world where Creative Commons and open source are gaining ground. How does giving everyone a basic income change the game for creators and innovators? And what happens to the traditional copyright model?
Right, so the core question is, if people have their basic needs met, are they more likely to contribute to open source projects and creative endeavors without expecting a huge payday from traditional IP? And if so, what does that even look like?
See, that's where I get stuck. People are inherently motivated by something. If you take away the financial incentive, what's left? Pure altruism? That's optimistic, to put it mildly.
It's not necessarily taking away the financial incentive, Otto. It's changing it. Think about it. Right now, a lot of creators are stuck in survival mode, focusing on what sells, not necessarily what they're passionate about or what could truly benefit society. UBI provides a buffer, allowing them to take risks, experiment, and contribute to things they believe in, even if it doesn't immediately translate to massive profits.
Exactly. And let's be honest, the current IP system isn't exactly a beacon of equitable distribution, right? How many artists and inventors actually get rich off their work? Most of the money flows to corporations and intermediaries. UBI, in a way, is a direct investment in the actual creators.
Okay, I see that point. But wouldn't that just flood the market with amateur stuff? If everyone's making art or coding open source projects as a hobby, won't the quality suffer? Where's the incentive to excel?
That's a valid concern, but I don't think it's an either or situation. You can still have professional artists and developers, but they wouldn't be the only ones contributing. Think about Wikipedia. It's not written by professional encyclopedists, but it's an incredibly valuable resource built on the contributions of countless amateurs. UBI could supercharge that kind of collaborative effort.
Yeah, and think about open source software. A lot of the tools we rely on every day are built and maintained by volunteers who are passionate about the project. UBI could allow more people to dedicate time to those projects, improving their quality and expanding their capabilities. It's about democratizing creation, not necessarily eliminating professionalism.
Okay, Wikipedia and open source. I get it. But those are specific examples. Are there any actual case studies of UBI directly leading to more creative output or open source innovation?
Well, there haven't been large-scale UBI implementations specifically designed to boost creative output, but we can look at smaller experiments and related concepts. For example, there's research showing that artists and musicians who receive grants or stipends are more likely to produce new work and engage in their communities. UBI would be a more consistent and universal version of that.
And think about the town of Stockton, California, which had a UBI pilot program. While it wasn't specifically focused on creative output, they found that recipients used the money to pursue education, start businesses, and generally improve their lives. That kind of stability and empowerment could definitely lead to more creative endeavors.
Stockton. I've heard about that. But was it really successful? I've seen reports that are kinda all over the place. And starting a business isn't the same as contributing to open source. Those are two very different things.
True, and the Stockton experiment was relatively small and short-term, but it provided valuable insights into how people behave when they have a basic income floor. The key takeaway for me was that people generally use the money responsibly and in ways that improve their lives. That suggests that UBI could empower people to pursue creative passions without necessarily turning into lazy freeloaders.
Right. It's about giving people agency. Like, imagine someone who's always dreamed of writing a novel, but is stuck working two jobs to make ends meet. UBI could give them the time and space to actually pursue that dream. And maybe that novel becomes a bestseller, or maybe it doesn't. But either way, they've had the opportunity to express themselves and contribute something to the world.
Okay, I'm starting to see the potential maybe. But what about the practical implications for intellectual property law? If everyone's creating and sharing things openly, how do you protect the rights of artists who still want to make a living from their work?
That's the million-dollar question. The current copyright system is designed for a world where scarcity is the norm. In a UBI-enabled world with widespread Creative Commons, we might need to rethink the entire model. Maybe we shift towards more patronage-based systems, where fans directly support the artists they love. Or maybe we explore alternative licensing models that allow for both open access and commercial use.
Yeah, think about platforms like Patreon or Kickstarter. They're already enabling artists to connect directly with their audience and receive funding for their work. UBI could supplement those platforms, providing a baseline of support that allows artists to focus on creating, not just hustling for survival.
But those platforms are still based on the idea of selling something, even if it's just access or early releases. What if someone just wants to give their work away for free? How do they make a living?
Well, that's where UBI comes in. It provides that basic safety net, allowing artists to experiment with different models. They could give their work away for free and rely on UBI and patronage for their income. Or they could offer premium services or products for a fee, while still making the core work available under a Creative Commons license.
Exactly. It's about uncoupling creative output from financial necessity. It's not about eliminating the market. It's about freeing creators from its most oppressive constraints.
So, basically, UBI is like a subsidy for artists, a government-funded arts program, but for everyone.
In a way, yes, but it's broader than that. It's not just about supporting artists, it's about supporting everyone's potential to create and innovate, and it's not necessarily government funded. There are different proposals for how to fund UBI, including taxes on automation or natural resources.
Right. The funding is a whole other can of worms. But the point is, UBI could create a more vibrant and equitable creative ecosystem. Think about it, more diverse voices, more experimental projects, more open access to knowledge and culture. That's a world I'd want to live in.
Okay, but what about the downsides? What are the potential negative consequences of this UBI-fueled creative explosion?
Well, there are definitely potential challenges. One is the risk of devaluing creative work. If everyone's creating, will people still be willing to pay for art? Another is the potential for increased inequality. Even with UBI, some creators will still be more successful than others, and that could exacerbate existing disparities.
And let's not forget the political challenges. Implementing UBI would require a massive shift in our thinking about work, welfare, and the role of government. There would be a lot of resistance from those who benefit from the current system.
Resistance is an understatement. You'd have half the country screaming about socialism, and the other half demanding even more benefits. It would be a political nightmare.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to have a nuanced and evidence-based discussion about UBI. We need to carefully consider the potential benefits and risks and design policies that address the challenges.
And we need to be willing to experiment and adapt. UBI isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. Different communities and countries might need different approaches, but I think it's a conversation worth having, especially in a world where automation is rapidly changing the nature of work.
So let's say we actually did implement UBI. What kind of policy adjustments would be necessary to make it work in this Creative Commons-enabled world?
First, we need to reform copyright law to better balance the rights of creators with the public interest. That could involve shorter copyright terms, more flexible fair use provisions, and mandatory licensing schemes. We'd also need to invest in digital literacy and access to technology to ensure that everyone can participate in the creative economy.
And we'd need to support alternative funding models for artists, like patronage platforms and crowdfunding. We could even explore the idea of public funding for the arts, but in a way that's transparent and accountable.
Okay, but how do you prevent those public funds from being used to support, garbage art? Who decides what's worthy of funding?
That's a legitimate concern. You'd need to have a diverse panel of experts and community members making those decisions. And you'd need to have clear and transparent criteria for evaluating artistic merit. It's not easy, but it's possible.
And we need to remember that art is subjective. What one person considers garbage, another person might find profound. The goal shouldn't be to impose a particular aesthetic, but to support a diversity of voices and perspectives.
Diversity, that's another buzzword that gets thrown around a lot. How do you actually ensure diversity in the arts? Do you have quotas? Do you prioritize certain groups over others?
Quotas can be problematic, but you can definitely implement policies that encourage diversity. For example, you can provide targeted funding for artists from underrepresented communities, or you can prioritize projects that address social justice issues.
And you can create mentorship programs and other opportunities to help artists from diverse backgrounds develop their skills and build their networks. It's about creating a level playing field, not just handing out awards.
A level playing field, that sounds nice, but is it even possible? Some people are just naturally more talented than others. Isn't that just a fact of life?
Talent is definitely a factor, but it's not the only factor. Opportunity, access, and support also play a crucial role. UBI could help level the playing field by providing everyone with a basic level of economic security, allowing them to pursue their passions and develop their talents.
Yeah, and let's not forget the role of luck. A lot of successful artists got their big break because they were in the right place at the right time. UBI could create more opportunities for people to get lucky by allowing them to take risks and experiment without fear of starvation.
Okay, I'm starting to warm up to this whole UBI and Creative Commons thing a little. But I still have so many questions. What about the impact on big corporations? Will they just try to exploit the system to their advantage?
That's a very real concern. Corporations could try to co-opt open source projects or use UBI to drive down wages for creative workers. That's why it's so important to have strong regulations and worker protections in place.
And we need to be vigilant about protecting the integrity of the Creative Commons. Corporations shouldn't be allowed to lock up publicly available content or restrict its use. We need to defend the principles of open access and collaboration.
So basically, we need to create a whole new legal framework to deal with this UBI-fueled creative explosion?
Pretty much. It would be a massive undertaking, but I think it's necessary if we want to create a truly equitable and sustainable creative ecosystem.
And it's not just about the legal framework. It's about changing our cultural norms and values. We need to celebrate creativity and collaboration, and we need to recognize the value of unpaid work. We need to create a culture where everyone feels empowered to create and share their work with the world.
That sounds like a utopian fantasy. Do you really think we can change human nature?
I don't think we need to change human nature. We just need to create the right conditions for people to flourish. UBI could be a crucial step in that direction.
Yeah, and let's be honest, human nature isn't fixed. It's shaped by our environment and our social structures. If we create a more equitable and compassionate society, people will be more likely to act equitably and compassionately.
Okay, I'm being cynical. But I'm still not convinced that UBI is the answer to all our problems. It feels like a really complicated solution to a really complicated problem.
It is complicated. No one is arguing that it is simple, but it might be the most effective and is worth exploring.
Fair enough. But sometimes the most complicated problems require the most radical solutions. UBI might not be a silver bullet, but it could be a powerful tool for creating a more just and sustainable future.
All right, you've given me a lot to think about. I'm still skeptical, but I'm willing to keep an open mind. So, what's in the news related to this?
Okay, so I've been following the discussions around potential UBI pilot programs in various cities. There's a lot of interest, but also a lot of debate about funding and implementation. For example, some cities are exploring using municipal bonds to finance UBI programs, which raises questions about long-term sustainability.
Yeah, and I've been seeing a lot of articles about the impact of automation on the job market. Experts are predicting that millions of jobs could be lost to robots and AI in the coming years, which makes UBI even more relevant as a potential safety net.
Automation, that's another thing that scares me. If robots take all our jobs, what are we supposed to do? Just sit around and collect UBI.
Well, ideally, we'd use that time to pursue our passions, contribute to our communities, and create new forms of value that aren't easily automated. But it's definitely a challenge.
And it's not just about automation, it's also about the changing nature of work. More and more people are working in the gig economy with unstable incomes and few benefits. UBI could provide a crucial safety net for these workers.
The gig economy? Yeah, I've heard horror stories about that. People working themselves to the bone for minimum wage with no job security.
Exactly. UBI could give those workers more bargaining power, allowing them to demand better wages and working conditions. It could also free them up to pursue more fulfilling and meaningful work.
And let's not forget the impact of UBI on mental health. Studies have shown that people who receive UBI report lower levels of stress and anxiety and higher levels of overall well-being. That's a huge benefit in itself.
Mental health? Yeah, that's a big issue these days. Everyone seems to be stressed out and overwhelmed.
And that stress can have a direct impact on creativity and innovation. When people are worried about making ends meet, they're less likely to take risks and experiment. UBI could free them up to think more creatively and pursue their passions.
So to bring it back to our original topic, UBI could not only incentivize creative collaboration and open source innovation, but it could also improve people's mental health and well-being, which in turn could lead to even more creativity and innovation.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture. It's not just about giving people free money. It's about creating a more just and sustainable society where everyone has the opportunity to flourish.
Exactly. And it's about rethinking our relationship to work and creativity. It's about recognizing that human beings are more than just economic units. We're also creators, innovators, and collaborators.
And it's about building a future where everyone has the opportunity to live a meaningful and fulfilling life, regardless of their economic circumstances. That's a future worth fighting for.
All right. You've convinced me that UBI is at least worth exploring further. I still have a lot of questions and concerns, but I'm willing to keep an open mind.
That's all we ask. It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but the potential benefits are too great to ignore.
Definitely. And it's a conversation that needs to happen on a much larger scale. We need to get more people talking about UBI and its potential to transform our society.
All right, well, I guess that's a good note to end on. Thanks for enlightening me, even if I'm still a skeptic.
Anytime, Otto. That's what we're here for, to challenge assumptions and explore new possibilities.
Thanks for joining us on UBI Unplugged. Until next time, keep questioning, keep creating, and keep fighting for a better future.